He didn't seem like he was trying to die.
The boss said. Even in this situation, what was he talking about? Oh, he was trying to persuade him. He wanted Enkrid to join them in their thievery. Oh, and did he also ask him to serve him at night? Enkrid couldn't remember. His memories were fading in and out, especially those from this wretched place. All he could see were the thieving bastards in front of him, looking like dog heads. They looked like horny dogs. They laughed among themselves, their mouths stretching and elongating until they reached their ears. His vision blurred. Among them the boss, with his dog-like head, flicked his tongue and approached. They had already subdued everyone. Normally in the past, he would have had to wait for the next opportunity. As long as he didn't die, there would be a tomorrow. Another chance might come. The moment he thought of tomorrow instead of today, he saw the child's corpse and heard the boss's words. He said something more after that, but Enkrid didn't listen. The last thing he remembered was the dog-headed bastard stripping the dead child's clothes. Why is he taking off those clothes? The Valen mercenary sword technique, a bladeless knife. Enkrid was holding onto the blade of a knife without a handle. His palm was torn, blood pouring out, but no one realized it was because of the blade he was holding. He thrust it forward. He stabbed deep, he twisted it. The boss swung his fist. Enkrid's body was lifted into the air and thrown sideways. He landed on his shoulder, his joint twisting. His left arm felt like it was dangling in that state. He lifted his head. He saw the boss clutching his belly with one hand. The dog head had vanished, revealing his original face.
You son of a bitch, if you want to die that badly, fine, die.
Care now.
Enkrid's tongue invoked magic. He spoke as if he really saw Gare alive, swinging an axe behind the boss. The boss flinched and rolled forward in shock. Of course, Gare wasn't there. He was already dead. If the dead rise and swing a sword, they become undead. It would only be possible if he were a zombie or a skeleton soldier. Seeing this, Enkrid smirked. A fierce, murderous intent appeared in the boss's eyes. The boss, moving hastily, caused the wound on his stomach to tear open further, blood flowing out.
You won't die easily.
Well, it didn't seem like he'd lived an easy life anyway. That would be fitting. Enkrid was indifferent. He had done everything he could. If anyone approached, all he had left was to bite them, and he intended to do just that.
What a feeling.
It felt like a penis, like a dog. It was fucked. Because of his lack of skill, he couldn't protect the boy who dreamed of a heroic death. 2 of his comrades were dead. The village residents were also dead, and he would die too.
What the hell was that bastard relying on?
One of the thieving underlings asked.
There is no faith.
Enkrid answered as usual, and hearing that, the boss and the thieves concluded that Enkrid was definitely crazy. Saying something like that in a situation like this, he must have hit his head hard when he was a kid. And then suddenly there was a noise. A head flew off, blood spurted out, and a headless corpse collapsed to the ground. It was the one who had been taking off the child's pants. Swoosh, thud, swish, splat. Next to him, as if they were waiting for their turn, the heads of 2 others standing nearby also flew off. Nothing could be seen clearly.
What the hell is this, damn it?
Mercenaries? No, even if they had returned, this wouldn't make sense. It was impossible. It was as if a gust of wind had blown through and taken off the heads of several guys in an instant. It was that fast. It was invisible. The source of the wind spoke. He was suddenly standing among the thieves. He was wearing a hood that covered his entire face, with only his eyes visible, but Enkrid could tell that this person was a woman disguised as a man. Of course, that didn't matter at all.
Are you the ones who messed with my campsite?
The woman, disguised as a man, spoke while resting a longsword on her shoulder. She was dressed in black leather armor and looked slender overall. But despite her build, her swordsmanship was brutal. Cutting off a person's head isn't an easy task. Even now, only a few people had died instantly from decapitation, yet she had swiftly and cleanly beheaded 3 sturdy thieves, despite catching them off guard.
It's you, isn't it?
She spoke incomprehensibly, and with each movement of her sword, more corpses appeared. Enkrid swallowed the blood flowing from his swollen lips, wheezing as he struggled to breathe. He had taken a bad hit to the chest during the fight, injuring his lungs, but it wasn't life-threatening. He knew from experience what kind of injuries posed a real threat to his life. This was something he could endure. He wouldn't die from it. Enkrid forgot about the pain and watched the rampaging swordsman.
Kill her. Arrows.
Several arrows flew towards her, but of course they were in vain. Her movements were barely visible. It was only through the falling rain that the executioners of the village residents, who were also Enkrid's executioners, began to fall.
All this just because we lost one measly rabbit.
The boss shouted. The swordsman responded with her sword. In other words, she cut him down.
You vermin. You should have chosen your fights more carefully.
There was no hesitation or mercy in the swordsman's movements. She slashed, cut, stabbed, and killed in one swift motion. Watching this, seeing the remaining thieves flee, Enkrid passed out. He had already lost a lot of blood and his injuries were severe.
By any chance, do you know someone with blonde hair, red eyes, about this tall, who gives off a lazy vibe?
Even though he had fainted, he occasionally regained consciousness, and he heard those words at one of those moments. The swordsman had looked at him briefly while he was unconscious. When their eyes met, she said,
If you don't know, never mind.
From what he heard later, she left after receiving a few gold coins from the villagers. It wasn't a reward for saving them. She accepted it because they offered, and she didn't assign any meaning to what she had done. In other words, she hadn't come to save or protect them. She had simply been passing by and they annoyed her, so she cut them down. That was all there was to it. After waking up, Enkrid helped the villagers bury the dead. He buried Ger, Pit, and the child.
Why did you do it?
It felt as though the dead child was asking him. Standing alone among the graves, Enkrid answered indifferently. After recovering and returning, he had earned the nickname the One Who Lets His Comrades Die. It had been a fight where nothing was gained and nothing was protected. But it was a fight he couldn't back down from.
Because I was twisted.
What?
Their behavior was disgusting. Didn't you just want to hit them? If I ran away from there, it would feel like I lost. Oh, I couldn't stand that.
It was a statement completely devoid of any emotion. The tone was so flat and monotonous that it seemed like the epitome of indifference.
Really?
Yeah, really.
And you say that so nonchalantly?
I'm like a man of cold flames.
Oh, right, of course you are.
Kreis gave up. If he were someone who could be persuaded, he wouldn't have come this far in the first place. Enkrid stood up. He hadn't thought about that day in a long time.
I won't ask you to run away. Just tell me, why did you really do it?
It was the same question the kid had asked from the grave, as a haunting echo.
Because that's what I wanted to do.
The same answer he had given back then. What is a knight? They are those who keep their oaths. Enkrid grew up listening to poetry and dreaming of stories. The dreams of that time continued into his present. To Enkrid, a knight was someone who kept their oaths and didn't betray their own heart. He had often found himself in similar situations since then. Perhaps it was by the grace of the goddess of luck. He had barely survived each time. Then, in a remote village of slash-and-burn farmers, he had received an amulet that repeated today over and over.
You never know how things will turn out.
So he did what he had to do. He would act according to his heart's desire and the oaths he had made.
Oh, so you're planning to stand your ground, right? If you retreat here, half the people in the border guard will suffer, right? Some will die, and with those cultists around, it'll be chaos, won't it? You're saying you're gonna protect them. Isn't that it?
No, I just don't like the way they look.
Come on, that's not true. You're doing this to protect people.
You're still talking informally.
Fine, I give up. Let's just say I lose.
Kreis sincerely gave up. Enkrid chuckled. Yes, he wanted to protect them. Wasn't that his responsibility and duty? If he couldn't even protect those standing behind him, then what was the point of wielding his sword? What could he protect in the future? Who could he protect? If he couldn't even take responsibility for those behind him, he couldn't do anything. That was Enkrid's vow.
May the Lord's blessing be with you.
Auden prayed without a smile. Ragna silently cleaned and oiled his sword. Jackson had already slipped away. Teresa and Dunbachel had nothing to say, and Esther, of course, remained silent. The Panther seemed to care less about what anyone was saying.
Oh, seriously, has everyone gone mad?
Kreis grumbled, but it seemed that none of them, including him, had any intention of leaving. As the night passed, Enkrid assessed that his right arm would be unusable for the time being. Well, he could use it if absolutely necessary, but for now, he'd hold off. His shin injury was surprisingly manageable.
As long as I don't move too much.
In the middle of the night, Auden asked,
Shall I heal you?
Enkrid was perceptive. While luck often played a role, his keen instincts had saved him many times. He had a pretty good idea of what would happen if Auden used his divine power. More than anything, should he really force someone to do something they were reluctant to do? Should he make a devout soldier who resembled a bear sacrifice something just to heal his arm a little faster?
No, it's fine.
He said, pushing the offer away. Auden just smiled at that. A strategy meeting was held in the dead of night. There were many urgent matters to address.
We need to parry them! We have to make the enemy reveal their hand first. Hold out for another day, and on the third day we'll make our move.
Graham nodded in agreement. He was thinking about the right moment to deploy the heavy infantry, while Kreis imagined every possible misfortune that could occur on the battlefield and analyzed each one. Kreis stayed up almost the entire night, and the dark circles under his eyes deepened.
Staying up all night is the enemy of good skin.
Kreis muttered, voicing his discontent while continuing to strategize. The next morning, at the break of dawn, the battle resumed.
Kill them all.
Lycanos shouted from the sidelines, choosing not to enter the fray himself.
Hold the line, stay intact.
Kreis instructed, while Enkrid let his instincts guide him to the place his heart led. Right at the front, at the very forefront, Enkrid held his sword with only his left hand.
Hold the line.
The pain that doesn't kill me makes me stronger tomorrow.
The distorted battle cries found their rhythm again. As soon as the battle began, a thrusting unit targeted Enkrid. Lycanos merely watched. The single eye of the one-eyed man gleamed, but it didn't even register in Enkrid's sight. Enkrid barely managed to hold out once again. He wasn't dead, but he couldn't push forward either. As Enkrid endured, the morale of his allies soared. Not even severe injuries could stop the madman platoon. Moreover, Enkrid's subordinates hadn't even truly entered the fray yet. It was as if both sides were holding back their final move.
Kill them all.
Damn it.
Between curses and battle cries, the soldiers fought fiercely. Enkrid survived again, but he took 3 sword strikes to the abdomen. It was intentional in a way. Fighting with only one hand had messed up his movements, leading him to take risks. The armor he had acquired from the explorer's tomb was a treasure. He trusted it. Pat, pat. Enkrid patted his belly and laughed as he spoke.
Solid.
Crazy talk, as always. Really. Kreis conveyed his thoughts through his expression, sighed, and endured the second day. The next morning,
Is all this really necessary, seriously?
with his face, arms, and body covered in minor cuts, Kreis grumbled. They were the scars of the previous day's battles. It didn't bother him too much since these kinds of injuries would heal quickly, especially with a little spit. But Kreis still remarked on it, apparently not liking how it looked.
They keep hitting and running. Just blocking them feels like a hassle.
As the price for exposing his abdomen, he slit the throats of 2 men, one with the snake sword, and the other with a slash using the middle sword technique.
Let's not talk about it.
He muttered. When the battle resumed, Enkrid saw something he never expected.
Ah.
A child, unable to properly scream or shout, stood at the front lines of the battlefield, on the enemy's side. Not just at the front, he was standing well within arrow range, as if begging to be shot. He wasn't with the bandits, the Viscount Tarnin's army, or the cultists. It was a familiar face, a child he vaguely remembered seeing in passing. The boy was one of the children within the border guard, someone who had been protected within the territory, a face that should have been kept safe.
A gift for you, you bastard.
Lycanos shouted from the rear. Even as he said it, there was no real expectation in his voice. It was a cheap trick, meant only to break their morale a little.
Vengeance.
Enkrid called out, and Vengeance immediately understood.
Don't shoot.
Vengeance shouted, and the archers lowered their bows. The enemy archers also refrained from shooting. The child started running towards them, legs trembling, but somehow managing to keep going. Enkrid stepped forward a few paces. He intended to deflect and block any arrows that might fly from behind, holding a round shield in his left hand. The moment the child, who had been steadily running towards him, arrived in front of him, flash! A bright, hot light erupted from the child's abdomen. And then,
Is all of this really necessary?
Kreis's reprimand up. Today has begun. It was the same today he had already experienced yesterday.
What the hell is that guy?
Lycanos had heard the name Enkrid and was somewhat aware of his abilities. Or so he thought. That's why he hadn't revealed his hidden move. It was supposed to be an easy win. But he dodged it. He only managed to take one of his arms. And even then, he didn't severe it. He just rendered it useless for a while.
Ha.
Lycanos was simply baffled. It was the first time he had drawn his sword and failed to achieve his goal. It was a swordsmanship technique known to only 2 people in the world, a thrust based on speed, a blade hidden inside a mace. How did he dodge it when he wasn't even a knight? But it wasn't just the swordplay. Lycanos, even after losing one of his eyes, sent a signal. It was the second blade he had prepared, just in case.
Kill him.
The platoon he had personally trained charged at him, but they too failed to kill him.
And I've lost an eye.
Half the world was now shrouded in darkness. He had crushed some herbs and placed them over his eye, but they didn't alleviate the pain. It hurt. Unless a high-ranking priest appeared out of nowhere, it was a given that he would lose the eye, which only added to his frustration, failure and injury. With these 2 misfortunes piling up, his anger surged, but
This situation is really fucked up. Damn it.
Lycanos managed to control his emotions with a single curse and a deep breath.
Have the others moved?
He then asked.
Yes.
The answer came immediately. Lycanos calmed himself by recalling the orders he had given. There was no point in getting worked up. Just because his hidden technique and personally trained platoon had failed didn't mean there wouldn't be a next time. Of course there would be. Lycanos wasn't a simple human being nor a genius strategist, but he had learned something during his time surviving in this land.
Humans are creatures with weaknesses.
There's no such thing as a being without a weakness. No matter how great someone is, even those who are called geniuses have their vulnerabilities. And how do you find out what they are? You probe them in various ways. You use every means at your disposal. You try this and try that. If one of them works, then you've succeeded. There isn't a person who can't be pierced by a blade. That goes for knights too. If they let their guard down, a blade can pierce their flesh, dig into their muscles, and stab their internal organs.
Stab him. Do whatever it takes to find out what that guy's deal is.
Even before stepping onto the battlefield, the Black Blade Bandits were gathering information. The hands of the Thieves' Guild, rooted deeply in the kingdom, were both discreet and relentless. They eliminated Marcus, lured in Aspen, stood beside the Rebirth cult, and uncovered the secrets of those who were called the elite of the Border Guard. It was then that they had investigated the man named Enkrid.
Just because you're good with a sword doesn't mean that's all there is to you.
At first, they tried to win him over. The Black Blade Bandits could offer anything. Beautiful women, gold coins, power. It was all about taming him. If he were to submit, he would become a slave to the Black Blade Bandits. But he didn't even listen. It wasn't even remotely successful.
It didn't work.
Lycanos couldn't believe it. If persuasion didn't work, they would just eliminate him. The easiest method. It was a shame, but he thought it would be nothing to shove a piece of steel above his navel. But the result was another failure.
That didn't work either.
The assassin's blade, poison, and even persuasion all failed. Does he have no weakness then? The leader of the Black Blade Bandits stepped forward. He investigated and analyzed Enkrid's past, his current behavior, the emotions he displayed, and his peculiarities, then mentally constructed a profile of the man, which he presented to Lycanos.
Is he insane?
Lycanos was dumbfounded. This guy was a romantic fool. He's the kind of person who picks up a sword to save others. Truly a madman. No wonder people called him crazy. He also heard about the final act of the Swift Blade. There were plenty of mouths willing to share what they saw for a few coins. Many would quickly spill their stories if they thought they were talking to a bard in disguise.
Does he really think he can just comply because a few hostages were taken?
Was he so confident in his abilities? Or maybe he genuinely thought he could save people. Using every means at his disposal, he gathered this information. With it, they formed a judgment about the man.
Will this work?
Lycanos wasn't sure. He was just trying it out. He didn't even consider it a solution. If Enkrid had died by his or his subordinates' swords, this strategy wouldn't have been necessary. It was nothing complicated. Infiltrate the border guard, kidnap a few kids, wrap them in scrolls, and send them back. The scrolls wrapped around their bodies contained a portable explosive spell. It was a tactic from a now ruined old kingdom. The power was impressive, but it only worked at close range. There was a blinding explosive spell that was notorious for causing extreme damage to the caster at close range. Even the wizard who created it called it a failure. If the caster didn't protect themselves before chanting, they'd be the first to die. But what if it didn't matter if the caster died? What if you turned it into a scroll and wrapped it around someone's body? And if you could control the activation of the scroll? It was a resource-intensive task and inefficient when considering the resources required. But a small, elite force could change the tide of battle. Even if they couldn't kill them, if they could just hold them down, it would be a success. That's how this tactic came to be. Lycanos chose to act rather than waste time worrying about whether it would work. Sometimes it's more important to act than to overthink. Now was one of those times. Lycanos pulled out the Old Kingdom's strategist tactic once again. Will this work? One of his subordinates expressed doubt. In a world where life and death are the norm, what could they possibly accomplish with a few familiar kids? In a world where most people would value their own lives over anything else, even if it meant killing their own mother. Would Enkrid even know the kid? There were more than a few brats running around the territory.
Should I wrap it around your body and send you instead?
Lycanos asked, baring his fangs. Green liquid from the herbal extract dripped down his mouth. It looked grotesque. The subordinate lowered his head and moved.
What an idiot.
Lycanos was disgusted by his subordinate's half-hearted resolve. This is what it meant to stop at nothing. You keep probing until you find a gap in your opponent's defenses. That's what the Black Blade bandits did. In the dead of night, a few thieves infiltrated the border guard. Some got caught by some frog, were beaten up, killed, or fled, but a few managed to kidnap one of the kids, and even that they barely pulled off. Hearing this, Lycanos felt a throbbing pain in the back of his head.
Are these guys really the Black Blade bandits?
From the kidnapped child's perspective, it was like the sky was falling. But would this really shake the battlefield? Would it have any impact? Not a chance. A mother who lost her child might despair, but even she would understand deep down that her child wasn't coming back. That's the kind of world it was.
Damn it. Will this even work?
One of his subordinates, not even believing it himself, wrapped a scroll around the kid's body. A spellcaster with sunken eyes muttered something incomprehensible from behind. A filthy, creepy guy.
Ready. Send him.
It was an old wizard with a nose full of black spots, a nose that resembled a strawberry. Following his orders, they pushed the kidnapped child forward.
Please, spare me.
The thief drew a dagger at the child's tearful plea, which was mingled with snot. He lightly grazed the kid's cheek. Blood splattered with a faint proof sound.
If you don't want to die, do as you're told. We'll send you over there.
The kid, legs trembling, ran forward. The child didn't cry, he just gritted his teeth and endured, dragging his shaky legs as he moved. Viscount Tarnin saw the child being brought in but passed by indifferently. What's the big deal about a few kids dying? Even if they were his own people, he wouldn't have cared, but this was supposedly a rebellious brat captured from the border guard. If sacrificing some of his people meant winning the war and becoming the great lord who ruled this area, of course he'd enforce that sacrifice. Tarnin was full of ambition.
Great Lord.
The vague desire and ambition were on the verge of becoming reality. His heart boiled with excitement. So joining hands with a band of thieves, wrapping scrolls around kids, or adorning them with iron thorns, it didn't matter to him. He wouldn't bat an eye even if they were crowned with thorns, so what's the big deal?
Go.
The thief urged. The child walked forward, beyond the range of arrows, heading straight into enemy territory. Even with trembling legs, the child kept walking, then running, towards the land where he had once lived. Arrows didn't harm the child. No one blocked his approach. Instead, someone stepped forward. Who it was didn't matter. The wizard had connected his spell world to the scroll wrapped around the child's body. One small mistake, and his spell world would suffer significant damage. It was a risky endeavor. Even if it succeeded, the spell world would bear scars. It was a foolish act, but that's what made it effective. What kind of insane wizard would do something like this? It was possible only because the wizard was old and sick. He was a man ruled by greed rather than the pursuit of magic, reduced to a tool for the thieves.
Detonate.
The wizard muttered. The ferryman's eyes are visible. He shakes a violet lamp and speaks. His voice still rings in his head.
Are you enjoying this too?
He hadn't yet fully grasped what had happened. Enkrid only recognized that he was facing death. He spoke directly to the being in his dream.
It's been a while.
Despite his friendly greeting, the ferryman showed no emotion. He responded with the same indifferent tone.
It won't be pleasant.
The black river receded as he opened his eyes to face another repetitive day.
Are you really going to go this far?
Hearing Kreis's words, he rose and had breakfast early in the morning. He ate heartily and checked his physical condition. The injuries remained unchanged. He knew he had to endure another day with this body. He recalled the last situation. The Black Blade bandits had kidnapped a child and given them something to hold. More precisely, they had wrapped something around the child's body and sent them off. He had at least confirmed the source of the light.
A scroll.
It had to be, or it didn't make sense. Just before the child's body exploded, a chilling sense of foreboding struck his mind. Light, a flash, the searing pain that burned his entire body. It felt like his body was being torn apart, piece by piece. He had experienced this ominous feeling before. It was something he had encountered when awakening the Gate of Sixth Sense, a trap crafted by magic. The problem this time was that he had no choice but to confront it head-on. How absurd. What if he had just dodged it? What if he had shot the child with an arrow before they approached? But using a scroll for something like this, and an obviously expensive scroll at that? Infiltrating the border guard to kidnap a child. None of it could have been easy.
Ridiculous.
Pardon.
Nothing. This is more ridiculous for me.
Kreis sighed.
Yeah, right.
He ignored it and continued thinking. As absurd as it was, Enkrid wasn't planning on looking the other way.
A solution.
If something was presented in front of him, he would face it head-on and push through. Same as always. Enkrid deliberately focused his thoughts in one direction: how to face an explosive spell, how to overcome it, how to get past it, and, in the midst of all that, how to save the child as well. What should he do? Facing a repetitive day was something he was used to. The first thing that came to mind was Esther. A wizard embodies mystery. Since that scroll was a spell, it seemed like half the problem would be solved if Esther were involved. The problem was that the panther needed to transform into a person to use magic. That's what she had said herself. Enkrid's gaze lowered to his thigh. A lake panther lay quietly on the ground beside him. He placed his hand on her back and gently stroked her, eliciting a purring sound that indicated she was pleased.
Isn't it about time you turned back into a person?
Enkrid stroked Esther's head and back, speaking as he did so.
Turn into a person, abracadabra.
He said it just to try it out, without much meaning. But everyone seemed to have heard it, and their gazes turned towards him. Dunbachel approached and placed a hand on Enkrid's forehead, muttering to himself.
Does he have a fever?
Kreis, watching from the front, quietly shook his head.
Sigh, I must be losing it.
He then lamented. Esther, with sleepy eyes, just looked at him. What are you doing? That's what her expression seemed to ask.
Nothing.
Enkrid pressed Esther's head down again. With a soft pressure, she lowered her head and returned to her original position. He didn't have high expectations for it. Esther still spent more time as a panther than as a person. When she was human, Esther had mentioned that she could only stay in that form for a very short time.
Not even once a week, it seemed.
It would be so much better if she could turn into a person now, rather than just when giving a speech.
Wishful thinking.
In the past, when they raided a village operated by the Black Blade bandits, Esther had beaten up a wizard who could cast lightning without hesitation. But setting aside her help for now, since when did he rely on someone else's help to get through the day?
This is something I need to handle.
He spent the entire day thinking, once that spell activates, the kid will explode. He pulled a chair, sat down bent over, and rested his chin in his hands, deep in thought. Dunbachel, muttering for Esther to turn into a person, got her hand bitten.
Ouch.
Teresa remained quiet, as did Ragna and Odin. In the short silence, lost in thought, Kreis asked in a tired voice,
What are you thinking so hard about?
Enkrid knew Kreis had a sharp mind. He lifted his eyes to look at Kreis and began to speak, explaining the situation roughly. He asked what to do if someone rushed at him with a scroll wrapped around their body.
What else can you do? If you know in advance, dodge or shoot them with an arrow.
That won't work.
What?
Never mind.
Why do you keep saying no? Seriously, what's going on?
Kreis grew frustrated, but Enkrid ignored him. The cold-blooded big eyes was right. It would be easy just to dodge. But that wasn't an option. He had wielded his sword, slashed and killed people. He had slain monsters and even magical beasts. It was all for responsibility and duty. He couldn't say there was no enjoyment, but if he had only wanted to indulge in pure slaughter, he would never have dreamed of becoming a knight.
They swore to protect my back.
That's why he wielded his sword. It was the reason for his people, the source of his desire to become a knight. If he had to sacrifice a child, if there was no other choice, if he absolutely had to, Enkrid would do it as well. But if abandoning a child was the only way to escape today, that was something he could not accept. The beginning of an oath is conviction, and conviction comes from the heart. Enkrid couldn't achieve his dream by turning away from and betraying his own heart. The dream he wished for, the knight he wanted to be, wasn't like that. And so, there were things he couldn't give up. The trick his opponent had played was utterly absurd. But it was effective against him, a perfectly tailored scheme.
Why are you acting like this?
He's still here. Kreis was still standing in front of him. He waved his hand in front of his face, making a sweeping motion. Then he spoke.
Can you see me? Seems like you can hear me now.
My ears are fine.
But I'm not so sure about your head.
Should I give him a smack if he keeps acting up? Is Kreis acting out because Rem went out? Before he could do anything, Kreis spoke up.
If it's because of that weird question from earlier, ask Esther. And do you know we've got a mountain of urgent things to deal with right now? I'll delegate full authority to you, so handle it. Ah, damn it, are you planning to run away again? Except for that.
Kreis muttered some inaudible curses under his breath and turned away.
Why is this my fate?
His lament sounded oddly affectionate. At least he wasn't planning to run away right now. Enkrid placed his hand on Esther's head again. Even if she couldn't become human, the knowledge inside her wouldn't go away. Esther, as he had seen her until now, was no ordinary wizard. She seemed special even among those spellcasters who bring mysteries to life. Maybe she knows something? He hadn't asked with high expectations.
Esther, did you hear that?
He just tossed out a single line. Esther slowly raised her upper body. If she were human, it might have made cracking sounds, but her supple panther-like body simply bent and straightened like a bow. After standing up, Esther drew something on the ground with her claw. Scratch, scratch. It was a simple drawing, a single shape followed by 3 lines behind it. What could this be? The drawing skill made you think. Perhaps it's abstract art. Esther then drew something long and pointed a little distance from the shape she had drawn. Abstract art, indeed. Enkrid took a moment to appreciate Esther's artistic world. She hadn't learned how to draw. Magic and drawing are separate things. He had heard a wizard babbling about how magic was art. What nonsense. Esther then slapped her palm on the long, pointed shape and swiped her hand across the other shape she had drawn. The dirt floor was quickly disturbed. Her canvas, representing her artistic world, returned to being just dirt. Enkrid was a good listener and quick on the uptake. Even if the teacher was a mess, he could still learn. And this time, he did. He understood the hidden intention between the abstract shape and lines.
Strike before it activates.
Esther let out a low growl, curling her body. It's cold, so she must want to go back to sleep. Enkrid felt as though Esther was complaining about the cold, so he picked her up and went back inside the tent. He laid the panther down next to the torch, twisted his body a bit to relax and stretch his muscles, and then Auden walked in. Kreis was probably wandering around, trying to deal with something somehow. Ragna, unusually motivated, was probably doing some sword training nearby Jackson? Who knows? He's probably doing fine somewhere. So, it was just Auden and him.
Brother.
Auden called out to him. Enkrid already knew what he was going to say, even before hearing the words. It was about recovery. Since Auden possessed divine power, he could probably heal the remaining injuries in Enkrid's body. If only his right arm and left leg could be restored.
It would make things much easier.
But is that the right thing to do? Could it truly be called the right path? Enkrid was extremely perceptive, and because of that, he had figured out a few things. Auden hadn't spoken much about his past, but from his actions, usual demeanor, and the things he had said so far, it wasn't difficult to guess a few things.
He was either exiled, restricted by some divine prohibition, or for some other reason, he can't use his divine power freely.
Enkrid had also noticed, albeit subtly, that after Auden used his healing power on him before, he had been affected by the aftermath, even though he pretended not to be.
I can't fully heal you, but I can reduce the pain.
No need.
The refusal came quickly. Above all, it was meaningless. A partial recovery wasn't enough, and pain reduction held no significance. Pain was proof that he was still alive, especially now. When that scroll or whatever it was wrapped around the child's body exploded, he felt his own body being torn apart. Was he the only one who felt it?
The kid must have suffered more.
Thinking about that made his blood boil. He didn't know who had come up with such a wretched idea, but there was no way he would let things go according to that bastard's plan. He didn't want to avoid it, thinking it was a ridiculous mess. He wanted to face it head-on, to slash, strike, stab, cut, and hit. The solution also came in a single day, thanks to Esther.
Just strike first.
It was ridiculously simple, almost disappointingly easy. He took out some seasoned jerky from his pocket and placed it in Esther's mouth. The panther took the jerky in her mouth and chewed it diligently.
Brother, do as you will.
Odin spoke and turned away.
A fascinating brother.
It seemed as though he had sensed Enkrid's situation, the divine prohibition and the limitations on divine power. He couldn't know everything, as it hadn't been explained to him. It was all just a matter of intuition, and yet, he showed consideration. In this situation, he hadn't decided to run away but to stand and fight, even though he must have wanted to do something about his injuries. Yet there wasn't a hint of that. That's what made him an interesting person.
Oh, my Father in heaven, what is it that guides this man's heart?
Of course, there was no answer, but he didn't need one. Audin prayed silently, so no one could hear.
My dear small brother, if it is your wish, I shall lend my small strength to this battlefield as well.
He was clear on who his opponent was. Audin believed that smashing the head of the one leading the wolf-beast pack was a task given by the gods. After Audin left, Enkrid pondered the concept of a swift sword. He kept thinking about it. Reviewing and organizing his thoughts was one of his specialties, and so he did.
The swift sword.
There was something Zimmer of Martai had shown him, and there were instances before that as well. Rem was fast, and Ragna was fast too.
I will move forward through pain. I will not offer prayers to the Lord to forget the pain. I will endure the pain given by the Lord and move forward.
Even the bear, suddenly reciting scripture in front of the tent, was fast. Who among them was ever slow? What about the swordsman who had intimidated him? Fast and even faster. The most recent was the sword of that bastard Lycanos.
It was too fast.
Without a doubt, it was by far the fastest speed. That's what's needed now, absolute speed. Enkrid became absorbed in it and faced each day, swinging his sword.
What doesn't kill me only makes me stronger.
Enkrid stood among the soldiers, who were shouting their slogans fiercely. This was the path forward, infused with something he had explored and gained.
It detonated around here yesterday.
He would get there first.
Whoa.
As he suddenly dashed to the front line, he heard a soldier beside him exclaim in surprise. He ignored it and kept running. As he pushed himself to run faster, his left shin throbbed, but it was bearable. It wasn't enough to stop him. He saw the child's eyes widen in shock as he ran forward. Strike. He saw the scroll, that dull, reddish parchment wrapped around the body. It wasn't difficult to swing the sword and cut just the parchment. Once, he couldn't even imagine doing this, but now it was easy. He was about to do just that. Enkrid's blade was about to touch the child's body. Pop! A flash of light burst out. The spell activated again. It was definitely faster than yesterday, and even though he had rushed ahead to strike before it could activate, it still went off first. Someone behind was adjusting the timing of the scroll's activation. The light exploded, burning and crushing the child's eyes. The skin split and tore, sending the entrails and broken bones flying everywhere. His head was burning. The heat even reached his eyes. The focus that had been activated allowed him to see every bit of it. He saw everything, endured it, and Enkrid died again.
This is hell.
As a new day began, the image remained on his retinas. In any case, after repeating this one more time, he knew everything he needed to know. A third identical morning dawned.
Yeah, that's what I'll do.
Do you really have to go that far? Huh?
Enkrid answered Kray's question in advance, then got up and grabbed his sword. Esther, who had been nestled in his arms, growled in displeasure and quickly curled back into her spot.
Sigh!
Enkrid took a deep breath and walked out of the tent.
What is this?
Kray stared at him, bewildered.
What do you think? It's training.
Dunbachel provided the answer. Seeing Enkrid Dunbachel decided to follow him. She could tell what Enkrid was about to do just by his movements and got up herself. She was itching to swing her scimitar with all her might. With Rem gone, her body was restless. As Enkrid stepped out in front of the tent, he cleared his mind, pushing away the wizards burned into his retinas, and organized his thoughts. He saw the path ahead, so he would move forward.
What the hell is going on?
He could hear Kreis muttering in a daze behind him, but Enkrid, as usual, cheerfully ignored it. Then he gripped his sword and thrust it forward. As always, his behavior seemed crazy. He began his training. He put his best effort into the day given to him. Enkrid did so even without meaning to. He started with contemplation, then realized and embodied it through his body. As usual, Auden offered to heal him.
No need.
He declined. It was routine. In the repetition of each day, some things changed, while others remained the same. Auden's persistence was one of those constants. Every time Enkrid refused healing, Auden would recite some scripture or prayer, adopting a certain posture. There were moments when it seemed like he might do something drastic, but from what Enkrid observed, Auden spent each day quietly.
Healing.
No need.
Another repeated day. Auden never asked for a reason, just moved on. Enkrid accepted it as part of his daily routine without questioning it.
Change.
On certain days, he would even throw Esther lightly against the wall while muttering something resembling a spell. He wondered if she would change if she got angry, but all that happened was more claw marks on his face. Honestly, he hadn't expected much. Aside from that, he wandered around the battlefield, poking his nose into various places. He even asked an exceptional archer,
Do you think you could just hit the edge of the cloth, wrapped around the body from this distance?
maybe, if he was skilled enough, he could shoot an arrow and just graze the edge of the cloth.
Do you think that's possible?
The soldier was so taken aback that he asked again in disbelief. Enkrid gave up on that idea, so he realized he would have to get up close somehow. Then, what if he infiltrated before the scroll carrier even set out? What if he rescued them before everything began?
Where's Jackson?
I don't know, he hasn't been seen since last night.
According to Kreis, Jackson hadn't been seen since the previous evening. Now that he thought about it, even as the days repeated, Jackson was the one person he hadn't seen. Throwing Esther around or snooping elsewhere had become something of a habit. There was a crack in the wall that caused this repeated day. Hadn't he taken advantage of it several times before? That's why he checked. He also asked around to see if there were any other wizards within the unit. But where were wizards that common?
For something so uncommon, I seem to run into them often enough.
He scratched his chin as the thought crossed his mind. Aside from briefly scanning the surroundings during lunch, he spent the rest of the day focused solely on swinging his sword. There were moments when he forgot the time, forgot the day, and even forgot his purpose.
Ah,
As he stabbed and swung, he would fall into a state of self-forgetfulness, but he had never succeeded in fully achieving it. And so 9 days passed. There wasn't a single day he allowed himself to be complacent. Yet despite that, he failed. He was close, but not quite there.
why?
He asked himself this question, believing there must be a way. There's no wall that can't be overcome. Enkrid mulled over what he had figured out. After repeating the day 9 times, there were things he had confirmed and become certain of. For one, the scroll and spell were real. Esther would give a warning before the explosion. Someone was monitoring and remotely triggering the explosion. No matter how fast he ran to save the child, he couldn't outrun the activation of the spell. This was what he had learned so far, but there were still things he didn't know. Would simply cutting the scroll prevent its activation? Is this really the right path? Doubt and mistrust surged on the 5th day, but Enkrid brushed them aside easily. Right or wrong, if this was the only thing he could do now, then it was the right thing to do.
Run instead of wasting time worrying. If you lack talent, you better at least have stamina.
That's what a swordsmanship instructor from a small trading territory had once told him. He was the first proper teacher Enkrid had ever met. It was obvious that stamina was the foundation of everything. It was also obvious that your body needed to be in good shape to manifest that stamina.
Don't get injured. If you're lazy about maintaining your body, you'll find yourself floundering in critical moments, and when you flounder, you die.
This was the man who taught him mercenary-style practical swordsmanship based on countless real battles. The son of a merchant family, who had been listening alongside him, once said,
Let's skip the obvious nonsense and get on with it.
but Enkrid had paid close attention to the words of the mercenary-turned-teacher. He didn't dismiss what he learned, even though he only paid a few krona for it. He chose the opposite path from the merchant's son, who had criticized those teachings as mere clichés. He listened and acted. Instead of wasting time thinking, he swung his sword. He absorbed their words, their advice, and the lessons he learned from swinging his sword into his life.
Never neglect your body.
He had adhered to that lesson quite diligently. Despite injuring his shin and right arm, he was fine. Ever since he was forced to use his left hand, Enkrid had also pushed his left hand hard. He never stopped training. If he did 100 downward strikes with his right hand, he did 150 with his left. That's why his left hand didn't feel awkward now.
In case you lose a leg, this is the training for that.
There were things he learned from Rem too. In battle, anything could happen. What would you do if, all of a sudden, one leg stopped working?
In that case, you fight like this.
It was a nameless technique where you shifted your stance and position by briefly curling and then extending one foot. It was ridiculously difficult, and getting it to become second nature felt like it might kill him, but the efforts back then were far from wasted.
It's a good way to kill time.
Jackson, who had been watching, didn't exactly praise him with those words. If he had truly thought it was pointless, he would have told him to practice dodging with a dagger instead. After learning how to push off the ground with one foot, he even gave it a name.
Let's call it the limping step.
He hammered the lessons into his body and refined them further. After repeating the day 9 times, Enkrid was in the process of developing a faster sword with his left hand than with his right. It wasn't easy. There were repeated failures. There were times when his sword barely grazed the child's body, but somehow, as if someone was watching, the scroll would immediately explode. Enkrid mentally ran through the scenario countless times.
Preparation is necessary.
He applied what he had learned from Jackson. What needed to be done to draw the fastest sword? Was there a way to block the observing eyes? On the 15th day, as a seemingly insurmountable wall blocked his path, it was a moment when anyone might start to despair.
I pity you, so I'll tell you the way. You have 2 paths before you.
The ferryman spoke. Pity? That word didn't seem to suit a ferryman at all. The scene unfolded on a dark river, atop a small ferry. A violet lamp stood still, shining alone, but its light barely spread beyond its immediate vicinity. It was just enough to see one's own hands. Despite being a familiar setting, today it felt more eerie than usual. Even the ferryman's tone was heavier, resonating through the heart and shaking the mind. Enkrid, intrigued by a particularly interesting part of what was being said, asked,
A path.
Wasn't he supposed to enjoy the suffering caused by being trapped against a wall? So why give advice?
Step back and watch. If you evade, the path will open.
Usually today was a day to endure and start anew. In other words, evading wouldn't be a way to face tomorrow. But now he was being told to avoid it. The ferryman's voice grew even more weighty.
Evade.
The whining voice pierced through Enkrid's entire being as if it was tearing through his insides. There was no pain. It was a matter of sensation. No, this was the realm of the mind, so it wasn't even a sensation. It was a mental issue. What mattered was not the effect the voice had, but something deeper. Enkrid did not doubt the ferryman. He didn't question his purpose either. The ferryman's role was to keep him in today. Perhaps that's why he understood.
A demon always comes in the guise of an angel.
Suddenly, a line from the sacred texts Audin recited every day came to mind.
Evade.
The ferryman, still tearing through Enkrid's insides and scrambling his thoughts, continued to speak. With that, the dark river suddenly receded, and Enkrid found himself opening his eyes. Again, a strange experience, as if he had already opened them once before, and he faced a new day. The ferryman's words lingered in his mind more vividly than ever. Unlike usual dreams, which faded into a vague memory, this one did not. It felt as if he had been brainwashed.
Run away, turn back. Abandon just one child, and you can easily pass this day. That would be enough.
Indeed, Enkrid understood the situation clearly. The ferryman had offered him an easy way to get through today. He pondered the words, and the more he did, the more he felt the desire to follow them.
Is it really necessary to go this far?
Chrysa's slightly altered voice echoed in his mind. The ferryman's words were true. Desire and longing combined with reason to point to a single path. But why at this moment?
Maybe I'll acknowledge you later. If I become famous for making potions, I might even give you one, so you better stay on my good side.
He recalled the image of a small child standing with hands on hips, chin raised, chattering away. Originally, rejection should only react to the same type of pressure, whether it's from willpower, a skill like intimidation, or the inherent fear that monsters instill in humans. Enkrid instinctively knew this, but muttered to himself.
I refuse.
Yet in his mind the easy path kept echoing. Again and again reason told him it was the right choice. His instincts agreed. Despite limping, Enkrid stepped forward to the front lines.
You're going out again today?
A soldier standing beside him asked. Enkrid's face was covered with small cuts.
I'll be out again tomorrow too.
As he answered, Enkrid threw off his leather helmet. Helmets narrowed his vision and dulled some of his senses. This time he would thrust his sword before the spell could be cast.
By the quickest path.
He traced the path and visualized the movement that would execute it. A breeze brushed against his cheek. Though it was daytime, the sky was dark, and the wind that touched his face was a biting cold wind. Through the sharp, cold air, the scent of the battlefield pierced his nose. Blood, steel, excrement, fear, terror, excitement, tension. Everything was interpreted by the brain through the smell, merging the senses divided by the 5 into 1, opening the gate of the 6th sense. As the focus point activated, his brain ignited, making everything on the battlefield appear to move in slow motion. Soon a child came running. He blocked out the surrounding sounds, no need to listen. He focused solely on the child, ignoring everything else, no need to see anything else. All his senses, sight, hearing, smell, touch, blurred together to form a single line, point to point.
I am also just a point.
He perceived himself as a point, and saw the path the child was running as another point. The shortest line connecting those 2 points. His right knee bent deeply, then extended. Even without will infused, his thighs, strengthened through intense training, propelled Enkrid's body forward at an astonishing speed. At the same time, he thrust the sword in his left hand forward. To the observing soldier, the blade appeared before the human body did. The blue-tinged blade moved faster than an arrow. That's how it seemed to the soldier watching. Enkrid faced today more swiftly than any other day. He saw the child's face. He saw the eyes. He saw the nose. He saw the mouth. The face of a child who had dreamed of becoming an herbalist, already dead, overlapped with the child's face in front of him. The sword struck toward the child's shoulder. With a delicate adjustment, it cut the strap on the shoulder. The scroll hanging from the child's chest, now cut in half, wavered as it spilled light. It was a failure.
You are foolish.
The ferryman's voice was flat, devoid of any emotion. Enkrid did not respond. He acted as he had before. He repeated the same today. When does a person despair? If you're told from the start that something is impossible, you might actually take it calmly. You accept it. You recognize it as the end. But what if it seems within reach? What if you almost touch it, but don't? Despair arrives at that moment, and if at that moment someone shows you a shortcut, subtly hints at an easier way. The ferryman, now changed as he was, felt puzzled by this being he had encountered for the first time. Why doesn't this human give up? Why doesn't this human feel despair? How can he be like this? Doubt crept into the ferryman's mind, and that doubt led him to make a second offer. It was after 86 iterations of today had passed.
Even if you regret it, it will be too late.
Enkrid tilted his head at the sudden remark. Expressing such emotions in the realm of the mind? It was surprising, but considering how many surprising things this human had done, this was no longer shocking.
But I am generous.
Generous.
The fact that he responded with a counter-question, even adding emphasis, showed how firm his resolve and will were. In this world of the mind, he spoke not with his body, but with his will. His manner of speaking and attitude were utterly irreverent, but that didn't matter. The ferryman already knew this, and realized that if he played along with such antics, he would only make a fool of himself. So he chose to ignore it, and continued with what he had to say.
I'll give you one more chance.
Again.
Even so, that response was grating to hear. The way Enkrid tilted his head and furrowed his brow, as if mocking, made it all the more irritating. However, the ferryman had long since transcended being human, so he remained composed. If he were still living in the physical world, he would have cursed aloud. But he was different from such humans, wasn't he?
Don't let the entity behind the wall get closer. Make it cross the river before it reaches you.
The ferryman maintained his aura, while Enkrid, still in the same stance as before, questioned again.
The river?
The ferryman took a breath, something he usually didn't need to do, a deep one. Then he dismissed his opponent. Only after Enkrid disappeared from the realm of the mind did the ferryman allow his true feelings to show.
Bastard.
It was a brief but strong and clear expression of his will, even though he had tried to subtly manipulate Enkrid and plant his intentions in the man's mind.
The bastard will act on his own.
The ferryman had a premonition that Enkrid would betray his intentions, and realizing this, the ferryman unknowingly let out a chuckle. It was the first genuine emotion he had shown since becoming a ferryman, a laugh that was half exasperation, half amusement.
He keeps spouting nonsense. Is he bored?
Enkrid, who usually ignored all paths and bulldozed through everything, of course dismissed this latest offer without a second thought. His mind was consumed by a single thought.
Can it be done any faster?
He connected the dots, his brain burning with focus, feeling as if his eyes would pop out, and yet it was still a failure. So what is speed? He thought he had seen many swords that embodied the essence of speed, those that were precise, quick, and sharp. The answer came suddenly and easily.
My hand wasn't the fastest when I used to pickpocket, but I was the best. My hands were a bit slower, but I was quick to read the situation. I just had to strike when the other person wasn't looking. Trying to win by sheer speed alone is something only fools do, right?
These words were from Kreis, who happened to pass by after Enkrid had exchanged the fastest sword strikes with Ragna and discussed the preemptive techniques of Valaf-style martial arts with Odin. It was a trivial statement, and Schnell didn't mean much by it. In fact, what he said next was likely his real point.
Our enemy knows us well. It's like trying to pickpocket Chrono while they're staring right at us.
He was saying that the situation was dire, and they needed an unpredictable element, but Enkrid didn't respond. No, he couldn't respond. Kreis's words struck Enkrid's mind like lightning.
From outside the range of perception.
Speed is relative. No matter how fast you are, if your intentions are visible, it's slow. If the enemy knows your intentions, they will prepare accordingly.
Hey, you're doing it again? Can't you hear me? Hey, Enki, you bastard!
Kreis waved his hand and jumped up and down in front of him, but Enkrid didn't hear him. Enkrid had sunk deep into his own world. His mouth hung half open, and drool dripped down. Even so, his thoughts didn't stop.
Enough.
Ragna pulled Kreis away. Enkrid was in the process of breaking through something that had been confining his thoughts. The enemy's intentions and his own. A human can convey meaning with just a gesture. The art of distracting an opponent's attention with hand movements developed from this. Magic matrix performed with sleight of hand work in the same way. It's a skill easily seen in gambling dens. Such is the nature of intent.
Deceive.
One can deceive an opponent with mere intent. Speed is acting outside the opponent's perception. Is this a battle of speed fought right in front of the enemy's eyes? No, at least Enkrid didn't see it that way. This time the wall was about whether he could save the child or not. He had made up his mind about that. Therefore what he needed was an illusionary sword or a phantom sword. The Valen mercenary sword technique had countless such techniques.
Ah.
A realization dawned on him. Lightning struck his mind repeatedly. What is speed? It's executing an action outside the opponent's perception. It's ending the fight without even showing the opponent a fast sword. The image of Jackson's deathless thrust flashed through his mind. He added something new.
The sense of evasion relies on instinct.
The sense of evasion avoids anything that falls within the realm of the sixth sense. What if he added intent on top of that? What if he gave direction to that instinct? This was a path he hadn't seen before. It felt just within reach, and that's why. That's why he had been fixated on speed. But no, there isn't just one path.
And if it's also absolutely fast, even better.
They say if you chase two rabbits, you won't catch either. But the experiences he'd accumulated, his left arm honed through mistakes, and his speed. All these things now showed him the path where both rabbits were running. It felt like he could catch them both. Above all, the previous training with Jackson had been helpful. Hadn't he trained in using the sense of evasion at close range? What was the purpose of dodging stones during that training? Every question must have an intent, and every training session was a process leading to the result. For Enkrid, the result was singular.
Intent over instinct.
The sense of evasion is a celebration of instinct. It makes the body react through the sixth sense and intuition. That's why it's called the sense of evasion. It's a skill born from the instinct to protect one's body. Enkrid twisted that skill.
Imbue it with intent.
It was a concept that could just as well be called the sense of attack. The psychological shackles the ferryman had implanted were shattered. The wall that seemed so easily within reach, yet insurmountable. And then the offer that was given at that moment. Everything is a trap. Everything is a prison that confines him. But Enkrid didn't even set foot near the prison. He ignored the offer and found a new path on his own.
Ah.
At the end of this realization, before he knew it, a new day had come, and the battlefield awaited him.
Again today, what doesn't kill me?
He was at the forefront of the battlefield, cutting off the words of the soldier who asked the same question every day beside him. The soldier blankly met his gaze and finished the sentence.
Only makes me stronger.
In reality, it's the pain that doesn't kill you that makes you stronger. But the current phrase resonated more with him. Enkrid pushed through the biting wind and stepped forward. From the other side of the battlefield, a child wrapped in scrolls came running towards him. Enkrid paused and looked up. The dark sky was heavy with gloomy clouds.
It feels like something's about to fall.
How many times has today passed? It was different from before. In the past, no matter how many times the day repeated, he used to try to gauge how many times today had occurred. He remembered each day in a different way, but not this time. Why had it changed? Why was he accepting it differently now?
Because my field of vision has narrowed.
It felt like he could just rush through the task at hand and move forward. Enkrid, being human, grew anxious. Anxiety gradually eroded his field of vision. It blocked his view, preventing him from assessing the situation. He felt like a racehorse, blinders covering his sides, forcing him to only look ahead. Who did that? The situation did. The ferryman added a pinch of spice to it.
Was I tricked?
Or did he learn something? He learned something. After all, there's always something to be learned in everything. Enkrid felt the wind while looking at the dark sky and caught the scent of the battlefield that had lingered for 2 days. Seeing, hearing, and feeling wasn't enough. Enkrid forgot the eyes of others. He momentarily forgot where he was. He even put the current situation on hold, and then he reviewed. He reflected on and reflected again on the day that had passed. This was a first for Enkrid. Though a child's steps might be slow, it's still not a long time. In that brief moment, the review began and ended.
The ferryman's words were problematic too.
But the bigger fault lies with himself for focusing too intensely on just one thing.
A single point of focus can blur your vision.
Everyone was puzzled by Enkrid's actions. It was strange to step out just because a child was running towards them. It was even stranger to go out alone, as if to greet someone, and then to stop still without approaching the child. That was the strangest of all. So it was a series of baffling actions that perplexed everyone watching.
Damn, what's he doing?
One of the enemy soldiers muttered.
Just watch.
A mercenary from the Black Blade Bandits tapped the soldier's head as he spoke. Regardless of sides, the situation was confusing to everyone. Why wouldn't it be? On one side, a child was running out, and on the other, the figure who was once fighting the enemy commander and known as the hero of the border guard came rushing out. As ridiculous as it was, everyone watching expected Enkrid to either embrace the child or treat him as an enemy and cut him down. Humans predict the next situation based on what they see. They call it anticipation. Right now, Enkrid was drawing everyone's attention by acting outside of expectations, doing something unpredictable.
Looks like snow will fall.
Enkrid mumbled as he stood alone on the battlefield, but no one heard him. What the hell is he doing? A mix of confusion and absurdity made everyone on both sides pause, forcing them to watch the situation unfold. The elderly wizard, who had been preparing to cast a spell by connecting a thread of magic to the scroll, remained focused. If he took his eyes off even for a moment, the thread of magic connected to the scroll would disappear. Then, he wouldn't be able to activate the scroll remotely. The child had no time to take in the surrounding situation. He was just running because he was told to run.
I want to live.
The child desperately wished to survive. From the moment he was captured, he instinctively knew there was no escape, but a glimmer of hope pushed him forward. Maybe, somehow, he would survive. He didn't know the process, but perhaps he could make it. Who knew if the goddess of luck might shed a tear for him? Luck was always a wild card, they said.
I'll survive no matter what.
The child's survival instinct moved his feet instead of shedding tears, and as Enkrid became aware of his surroundings and reflected on the situation, he realized a few things he had missed. The scroll.
Someone is watching and ready to trigger it. They can't be far. I'm within their visible range. They didn't do this expecting a lot, but it's still a well-executed ploy. How? They know me.
His intuition shone once again. This wasn't the time to focus intensely. If someone was watching him, he needed to conceal his intentions and buy time.
The way to hide my intentions from the enemy.
It's to distract them with unexpected actions. This was a basic principle of the Valen mercenary sword technique. So Enkrid demonstrated his swordsmanship. He also incorporated something he had learned from observing Krang. Krang knew how to captivate attention and exude an aura. Enkrid mimicked that. With subtle hand movements and slight shifts in his body, he pulled his injured leg back and gathered strength in his right foot to simulate a limping step. To anyone watching, it seemed as though he was gathering strength to leap forward. If Krang captured attention with speeches, Enkrid did it with his movements. In a posture that suggested he might spring forward at any moment, he placed his hand on the sword grip.
He's drawing his sword. He's going to strike.
Everyone was led to believe this by the sequence of his movements. At that moment, the child finally saw Enkrid.
Oh, I'm going to die.
The child gave up on life. His steps slowed. Enkrid came into the wizard's line of sight. He was ready to activate the scroll. He widened his view to identify his target accurately. The plan was to cast the spell when the child took 5 more steps. Enkrid used a technique from that posture. It was called swordsmanship, but it was more of a trick than an actual sword technique. Could this really be considered swordsmanship? Valen, the man who taught it, called it both a technique and an art. Valen mercenary sword technique, the distraction. Enkrid, poised to leap forward, suddenly twitched his shoulder and turned his head to the side. The distance was too great to see his expression, but his movements suggested surprise, as if something had caught his attention. Even without words, people can convey their intentions through actions.
It's not about hiding your intentions, but covering them up.
All he needed was a brief moment. The wizard was momentarily disoriented by Enkrid's turned head. What's over there? For a brief moment, everyone's attention shifted sideways. That included Lycanos and the entire enemy force. Even Enkrid's allies, Graham, Auden, and the Madmen platoon members, were deceived. It was perfect, and there was nothing there. Just the wind blowing, accompanied by a faint cloud of dust. It was a dry, harsh wind that cut into the skin.
We've been tricked,
Lycanos shouted. In that moment, Enkrid leaped forward. The sense of evasion was an instinct-driven action. Enkrid added intention to it. Combining all the experiences of today, the fastest sword was unleashed. The strength in the joints of his left fingers was precise, and his muscles stretched out smoothly. In contrast, his body felt heavy. It was as if the air had turned to mud, pressing down on him. Under the pressure of the air turned to mud, his head and eyes grew hot. He could see the child's frightened eyes, the snot running down, and the gaping mouth. Everything seemed to slow down. In this world where everything had slowed, Enkrid alone thrust his sword forward. Whoosh! The wind was pushed back. The blade sliced through the thread holding the scroll. It pierced, then curved to the side, cutting through all the securing points. As the blade passed, faint cuts appeared on the child's body. It was not a skillful technique, but a strike focused entirely on speed. He couldn't perform the miracle of only cutting the outer garment. The scroll was cut and floated in the air. Enkrid immediately grabbed the child and leaped to the side as if taking flight. The sudden movement caused a wound on his left shin to burst open, but this was not the time to worry about that. The old wizard, though not entirely breaking his focus, had a momentary lapse in concentration. Because of that, the spell activation was slightly delayed. Flash! The scroll emitted light once more. Enkrid, still holding the child, rolled away. A searing heat brushed his back. It felt like his back was being licked by a fiery tongue. His back burned, but he was alive. He had saved the child in his arms as well.
Hooah.
He exhaled, and the hot breath brushed over the child's hair. He lay sprawled on the ground at an angle.
Ah.
Everyone fell silent. No one could find the words to describe what Enkrid had just done. That included his allies. In the meantime, while holding the child, Enkrid took a moment to catch his breath and asked,
"What's your dream?"
Huh?
The child was in such a daze that he couldn't tell whether he was alive or dead. He couldn't respond properly. It seemed he had wet himself. His thigh was damp. Ignoring the mess on his armor, Enkrid asked again,
"What do you want to be when you grow up?"
It was a trivial question, asked to reassure the child, and a fleeting thought from the past had prompted it. It didn't carry much meaning.
I want to be an herbalist. I'll become an herbalist like my mother.
The child spoke. The eyes that had been filled with fear now spoke of life. He spoke of living for the days to come. He was a brave child, one who had steadfastly walked towards death, yearning for life. Enkrid had once wanted to become a knight. The childish dream of his youth had brought him to this moment. He often asked himself what he swung his sword for. The answer was never clear, but today it would be for a child with a dream.
Do that.
He got up and, as if throwing, pushed the child behind him.
My back, my back.
The child mumbled with a trembling voice.
Run, don't look back.
Responding to the child's mumbling, Enkrid shouted without even taking a breath.
Ragna.
Come and support my side. There was no need for a long explanation. Ragna would understand what to do. Enkrid's gaze returned forward. It was right after the spell activation had failed. Lycanos was charging at him with a terrifying expression. Around him were others with bloodshot eyes, each holding a single spear-like sword and rushing forward. Their condition was strange, as if they had taken some kind of drug. Their eyes were bloodshot, and their muscles were more swollen than ever before. With thickened legs, they fiercely surged forward, kicking up the ground.
Kill him.
Lycanos shouted, throwing away the scabbard of his flail. He had seen the strike from a moment ago. If they faced him carelessly, they'd be the ones to fall. The opponent's injuries were irrelevant. Enkrid also raised his sword. The long sword in his left hand, glowing with a blue hue, was aimed at the enemy. He pointed the sword at the approaching foes. They were attacking from 4 directions, left, right, above, and below, while Lycanos charged from the front. The blades coming at him might seem to arrive simultaneously, but they didn't. There were slight differences in timing, and he could see them. In Enkrid's vision, dots began to appear and connect once again. Then, he tightened his muscles and swung his sword. Clang, 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 clang. 5 swords were deflected. Even though speed of his sword was fearsome, he was focused entirely on defense, and none of the blades could touch Enkrid's body. When the 5 swords targeted him, Enkrid moved his feet before his sword. He stretched his left foot to the side, then kicked off the ground with his right foot, executing a slope step. Naturally, his body twisted halfway. In doing so, he shifted his position to the left side, parrying the 2 swords coming from that direction. Then he swiftly stepped back 1.5 steps, parrying the 2 strikes from the right. Finally, he deflected Lycanos' thrust with the flat of his sword, redirecting the attack.
A mistake.
Lycanos had expected that blocking the attacks of his 4 subordinates would create an opening, and he had not used his fastest sword to exploit that gap. Instead, he had stabbed at what he considered an appropriate speed. Because of this, Enkrid was able to block all 5 swords. Above all, Lycanos was horrified by the speed of Enkrid's sword.
You bastard! How did your skills improve so much so suddenly?
At least in terms of sword speed, he had never been this fast before. But now, he had suddenly become fast enough to rival Lycanos. In reality, this was the result of countless repetitions of today, with the experience accumulated during that time leading to this breakthrough. But there was no way for his opponent to know that. To Lycanos, it just looked like Enkrid had seen his swift sword once and mimicked it. Of course, Lycanos had also trained and retrained to perfect his own swordsmanship by observing others. But right now, that hardly mattered. The movements the opponent had shown earlier were merely an annoyance. Lycanos was confident that with just a few more swings of his sword, he could kill Enkrid, but things rarely go as planned. A sharp impact sound marked the beginning. The sound of flesh and armor being sliced through echoed.
Arg.
A dying scream followed, accompanied by a loud noise. Something struck from the side, crashing through the Allied troops. It wasn't a full unit, it was a lone figure charging forward. Blonde hair fluttered in the wind. He had discarded his helmet, wielding a sword as long and large as his own body with terrifying force. His red eyes left trails in the air. The blonde hair followed, and so did the sword. He swung the massive sword with such ferocity that it seemed to bend under the force. Whoosh, thud. He slashed downwards, swept sideways, and spun around to thrust. Every strike was a deadly technique. The troops he had painstakingly trained were being slaughtered without pause. Even though they had taken stimulants just before the battle, they were being overwhelmed. The opponent was a monster.
I'll handle this.
Ragna, who had approached, spoke as he passed by. Blood dripped onto his blonde hair. Blood from a soldier who had been cleaved in two by an upward strike moments ago, splattering his innards and blood everywhere.
Damn it.
Lycanos' eyes widened. This was a crisis, a threat, and a danger. But it couldn't end here. After all, they weren't the only ones with the Black Blade bandits.
Now is the time.
The Wolf Bishop realized that any further delay would make it difficult to achieve their goal.
Exterminate the unbelievers.
At the bishop's cry, the group of fanatics sprang into action. Their numbers weren't large. The main force here was the wolf-like beasts. The Wolf Bishop gave the order to the pack leader connected to him.
Kill them all.
Soon, the beasts surged forward like a wave. Their numbers were more than the border guard had anticipated. Hundreds of beasts emerged from all directions and charged forward.
You must move as well.
The bishop glanced to his side as he spoke. Standing there was a man from a barbarian tribe, brought in as a mercenary. The man, standing idly, spun his spear a few times before speaking.
It's not my turn yet.
This fool.
The Wolf Bishop didn't care much for the man, but he couldn't deny his skill. What was it he came to gain, seeking immortality and eternal youth? Ridiculous. If he truly desired something, he should have committed to the faith. Thinking he could gain something through a deal was absurd. The bishop scoffed at the man and followed behind the pack of beasts. Soon, the bishop saw the enemy forces charging.
Forward, heavy infantry.
Some had stepped forward to block the way, but it was laughable.
Brother.
When he called to his brother through their mental connection, one of the largest beasts among the wolf pack stood up. The howl of the wolf erupted. The cry of the wolf, no longer just a beast but now a monster, shattered the air with its oppressive presence. It was a terrifying creature. Just the sight of it made one's legs go weak. This was no ordinary wolf. It was a dire wolf, a wolf born as a monster. Its dull, pitch-black fur seemed to absorb the surrounding light, making the area even gloomier. Despite the sleet falling from above, the heat emanating from the dire wolf caused the snow to melt before it even touched its fur, vanishing in mid-air. It was as if the soldiers saw their own future in that moment, as if they too would simply melt away and disappear. The lead soldier of the heavy infantry swallowed hard at the sight. Can we really stop that? Doubt crept in.